The idea of the superhero is one that many of us have grown up around. With the biggest publishers in the industry having been around for over 80 years, the notion that we could discover a special power and use it to walk out onto the mean streets and put a stop to crime with our fists is a fantasy in the backs of a lot of our minds. Granted, many of our heroes possess superpowers that none of us could realistically hope to get, but others in the ranks of the hero are only slightly more remarkable than your average human being. So then, in this the age of the internet, why are more of us not following the likes of Kick-Ass and ordering lycra bodysuits online in hopes of putting together a real-life Justice League? Consequences, that's why. However, it is true to say that not even our superheroes are safe from the snaking tendrils of the unintended outcome, and with some of the most memorable moments in comics being born out of bad split-second decisions, to see a perfect example of how easy it is to mess up, we can concentrate on the actions of just one of the most legendary and long-standing heroes of the comic book world. He has racked up some titles. Brains, brawn, and billions are his superpower. I am, of course, talking about Gotham's staunchest protector, Batman. With that said, hi, I'm Sally from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 times Batman got it wrong. Number 10. Proposing to Selena Kyle. Coming to us from the 2016 DC Rebirth line, it was issue 24 in which we saw our caped crusader get down on one knee. Bathed in the light of the bat signal on a Gotham rooftop, Bats pops the question to Catwoman, who proceeds to make us wait until issue 32 for her answer. All seems to make sense. Their constant flirting over the decades and Kyle's acceptance of Bruce's dark side make us wonder if perhaps the duo might heal each other's emotional wounds. After 17 more issues of butt-kicking and wedding planning, Bruce and Selena decide to elope to the oh-so-glamorous locale of the rooftop on which Batman first proposed. But in a twist muchly used in many a romantic story, the cat breaks the Bat's heart, never turning up to say I do, citing that her love for him is the only reason she can't go through with the wedding, and she didn't want to make him happy enough to quit the cape. Why, Bats? You were doing so well staying out of the range of her claws. Number 9. Falling for Talia al Ghul. Talia al Ghul has saved Batman's life on many occasions. Proclaiming her love for him as early as the 1971 issue Daughter of the Demon, Bruce admits his own feelings for the amorous anti-hero, eventually getting married and snuggling up for a bit of adult cuddles in the 87 graphic novel Son of the Demon. Talia falls pregnant. After nearly dying trying to protect his pregnant wife from an assassination attempt, Talia realizes just how dangerous it is for Bruce to have a family. Telling Wayne she'd lost the baby, Talia leaves and their marriage is dissolved, allowing Batman to once again face his enemies with a fearless mindset. I think the main lesson here is that it's probably best not to start a family when a highly trained assassin is out there actively trying to kill your wife. Number 8. Killing people. It is well known that the Dark Knight doesn't kill, and why all instances that have driven him close to breaking his golden rule have had us flicking back in disbelief at how close the Caped Crusader could come to taking a life. But this is not how the Batman started out. Some of the most jaw-dropping issues starring the world's greatest detective are his first. Back when the detective comics were the only bat source we could get, Bruce Wayne had not yet given himself the code of honor that would set him apart from the criminals he was fighting against. One instance even seeing him hang a criminal from his Batplane. Glad to say that by issue 4 of his own dedicated comic book line, our Dark Knight saw the error of his ways and is now far easier to distinguish from the bad guys. Number 7. Torture. Anyone who's ever been punched in the face knows just what an eye-watering experience it is. Now imagine being punched and kicked repeatedly from what seems like every direction by someone wearing what are essentially knuckle dusters and very heavy boots. A toe-to-toe fight is one thing, but when someone's lying on the ground defeated, is it really right to keep kicking? One particularly poignant example of this was brought to us by a team that included the creative visionary that is David Finch, and came in 2011's Batman the Dark Knight. Efforts to locate his childhood friend Dawn Golden led our Caped Crusader to one of his longtime nemesis, Penguin. But things got away from the regular when during questioning Batman proceeds to break Penguin's limbs. We, along with Alfred, had our hands over our mouths, knowing that our bats had gone too far on this one. Number 6. Recruiting children. While many elite athletes start training at a young age, the idea of sending a 12-year-old out into the night to fight actual people with guns is something I think we would all agree is not the best idea. This line of thinking, however, seems to have eluded our Caped Crusader on 5 separate occasions over the decades. In the case of Batman and Son, it could be considered a form of rehabilitation for his son Damian Wayne. The product of Bruce's love affair with Talia al Ghul, Damian had already been trained to kill at a young age by his mother and the League of Assassins. so dodging bullets was already second nature to him by the time he met his father. But see how one mistake spirals out? We could argue that in joining forces with the pint-sized vigilantes, Batman serves as a mentor and protector, that without him they would likely still put themselves at risk, and it's better they do it with him than without. But if that is truly the case, I would like to point out the less than intuitive choice to dress them in bright, distracting colours, and his tendency to punish them quite harshly when they inevitably make mistakes. Could it be as simple as misery loves company, and that anyone older would tell Bruce where to stick his batarang pretty early on into training? I'll leave that one with you folks. Number 5. Unspoken Slavery. Harold Allnut is portrayed in the comic books as being a member of the Bat family. Spanning both Batman and the Detective comics, the Penguin Affair story arc released in 1990 introduced Harold as the mute, hunchbacked mechanical mastermind who gave Penguin a weapon that almost defeated the Batman. It's not until poor Harold overhears Cobblepot's plans to kill him that our technical genius finally understands who he's shacked up with. Enter Batman, arriving to foil the plans of the umbrella-wielding gangster and finding himself quickly set upon by a crazed, bloodthirsty flock. A betrayed Harold attacks Penguin, causing a distraction that saves the Dark Knight's life. Harold then disappears into the shadows, and we think that's the last we hear from him. Later in Batman 458, our technical genius has made a modest life for himself. Batman arrives to repay Harold's earlier assist, and after some deliberation, invites Harold to live with him. With Harold enjoying his TV time and the company of Ace, the faithful Bat-Hound, we assume this to be a happy ending for the Hunchback. Until you realise that in the following issues, Harold is always in the Batcave, silently toiling away to create all of Batman's gadgets and keeping the Bat vehicles tip-top. It begins to seem that for Harold, his whole world is that dark, dank cave, and he works around the clock with very little mention, and we assume no pay. Number 4. Choosing Azrael to be Batman. Now granted, Azrael Batman started off okay, but his overall tenure saw him killing people, ignoring innocents in distress, ruining the reputation of the Dark Knight, and driving Harold and Ace out of the Batcave. Well, technically he drove them further in, but that's beside the point. Not cool, Jean-Paul. While Scarecrow's fear toxin played a big part in Valley doing an all-round poor job of carrying the mantle of the Caped Crusader, it was still something that the world's greatest detective should have seen coming. Number 3. Creating Joker. The alias of the Red Hood is one that's been used to cover the identities of a few different characters over the decades. But let's talk for a moment about the original Red Hood. His first appearance knew him as the criminally minded lab employee after $1 million. But in Alan Moore's acclaimed 1988 graphic novel Batman the Killing Joke, we read the story of a poor family man and wannabe comedian coerced into criminality by dangerous mobsters. Batman chases an already terrified Red Hood over the catwalks of the chemical plant in which he used to work, eventually cornering the petrified engineer. With nowhere else to go, the desperate man escapes the Dark Knight by jumping into the vats below, emerging on the other side as the white-skinned, red-lipped, green-haired Joker, who has grown to become the greatest adversary of the world's greatest detective. The iconic line, "Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice," leave the origins of Batman's leading nemesis beautifully obscure. Number 2. Letting pride get in the way. 2005's DC Countdown, or more famously Countdown to Infinite Crisis, began a series of events that nearly destroyed everything and everyone. However, the majority of the Justice League missed a valuable opportunity to get out in front of one of the global threats headed their way by ignoring Blue Beetle and his alarm that someone seemed to have stolen almost all of his money. And we're not talking a small amount, like more than you're probably thinking. Though almost the whole Justice League disregarded Blue Beetle's call for help, our Caped Crusader is particularly harsh with his dismissal. When Cord comes to him personally to warn him that Wayne Enterprises is being manipulated like his own company Cord Industries, Bruce lets his dislike for his rival get the better of him, telling Ted he'll look into it with the same tone as GTFO. Unbeknownst to our crew of crime fighters, Blue Beetle has stumbled upon the term OMAC in his search for his missing fortune, a foreshadowing of things to come and what would have been a valuable lead if anyone had bothered to listen, including the world's greatest detective. Number 1. Brother Eye. This is by far and away the most dire mistake our Dark Knight has ever made, allowing his mistrust of his fellow crime-fighting compatriots to get the better of him. Creating a satellite capable of tracking the movements, whereabouts, and weaknesses of all metahumans, allies and enemies alike, Batman releases the semi-autonomous Brother Mark I into geosynchronous orbit. During Countdown to Infinite Crisis, Maxwell Lord successfully hacks into Brother Mark I and convinces it of the dangers of metahumans. The judgmental satellite decides to attack, creating OMACs and sending them after the superhumans. When Lord is rather brutally put down by Wonder Woman, the newly self-proclaimed Brother Eye broadcasts the murder and directs its remaining OMACs to attack the Amazonian homeland. Though demonstrating the threat it poses to Earth, the Justice League failed to keep Brother Eye from becoming the perfect tool for the invading Golden Age heroes of the pre-crisis continuity. Eventually, of course, the heroes win, defeating the interlopers and destroying Brother Eye and freeing all of those who've been assimilated. But imagine, if you will, that Bruce had been the bigger person and discussed with the Justice League about their breach of his trust. Maybe suggested they go to group therapy or something, instead of training a great big eye in the sky on them for 24 hours a day. I mean, think of the footage that was in those archives. Gross, Bruce. That's a bad Batman. So that was 10 times Batman got it wrong. I've been Sally from WhatCulture.com, and you have been the audience, the whole audience, and a brilliant one at that. Let us know what you think in the comments section below. Mash buttons, the like, subscribe and little bell, and you'll never miss out on our bountiful offerings. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you again soon.